a couple of things that are working for us at the moment around just opening up, sort of enabling better sort of futures for youth, for young people, and also on our gender diversity piece. It's not that I think these are the right answers, they're just things that are working for us, and I always just find just getting different case studies stimulates something for me that's quite different. So what I'm going to just cover off is a little bit about who Standard Life is, a little bit an example of about how we're breaking down barriers to work for youth employment, and a piece about how we're starting to enable better gender balance in the workforce. And all of that is underpinned by the culture that we're trying to create around inclusivity. So first of all, just to give you a bit of context, who are we? Standard Life are, as you can tell by the accent, a Scottish-based organisation, but we're a global investment company. We are almost 200 years old and have 4.5 million customers, and that's across 46 countries. So despite the fact that we're based in Edinburgh, we do have a significant global reach, and then another additional sort of 25 million through the joint ventures we have in Asia. We've got about 6,500 people that we employ globally, 2/3 of which are based in Scotland. So we've got quite a different demographic to a number of people, and a number of the sort of case study examples that I've been hearing in the room today, and I'll talk a little bit about the challenges that brings to us. Key piece there is about leader for corporate sustainability. That is a huge piece about who we are as a business, how we operate sustainably, how we employ sustainably, and all of that has a huge diversity lens to it as well. We've gone through a significant transition. When I joined the organisation 11 years ago, we were just coming out of a demutualisation process where we were a traditional pensions and life assurance company. Over the last few years, we've gone through a transformation to become a FTSE 50 company, a much more global organisation, and about long-term pensions and savings. And now we're moving into an era where we actually are leveraging the Standard Life Investments part of our business, and it's all about growth and global growth. So it's a really interesting organisation to have been part of, because it's been quite a journey of transformation and change, which isn't going away. So I'm not going to go through lots of reasons why it's important. The same sort of reasons will be important to all of you as D&I professionals. But some of the things that are particularly important for us are around the whole innovation for growth. We know as we want to grow globally, we're 75% more likely to capture a new market and 45% much more likely to capture a really great market share within that. Future-proofing our workplace, which isn't necessarily a UK-based client base, and adapting to the talent landscape. We have quite particular talent challenges. My previous role was the head of talent for Standard Life, and some of our challenges are based around, 83% of the world's workforce is now not white and not male. So, and actually we're based in a part of the country where there's 4% ethnicity in Edinburgh. And actually, how do you start to change that when actually the supply is not necessarily in the place that you employ most people? So some significant challenges for us. And what's been really helpful for me recently is we've had a real move in terms of our group strategy. Our strategy is now all about the globalisation and diversification of our clients, customers, geographies and markets. That's a great thing to hang your hat on, because you can't do that without actually having a diverse workforce that moves us beyond homogenous sort of UK-based decision making. The whole piece for us around protecting and enhancing external reputation and our industry is a critical one for us. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the challenges within financial services in the UK, but we're a sector which has a massive pay gap. It's double the pay gap of the average pay gap of the UK at 39%. We've got 14% of leadership teams that don't have any female representation on them. And so a lot of that is driven by the government, the UK Productivity Plan. We now have a Women in Finance Charter, which I'll come back to. And a lot of the research around the investment management, the asset management business, tells us that only 10% of fund managers, people managing money, are female. and that accounts for only 7% of global investment funds. When you've got a client base that's increasingly diverse, you can't actually have homogenous decision making in how we manage funds. So lots of reasons about our own reputation in the investment management space, but also the reputation of the industry as a whole. Opening up to global talent markets. And one thing about Standard Life that attracted me there and has kept me there for 11 years is that it is a very responsible, values-driven business. This is the right thing to do. We do the right thing. We are absolutely focused on doing that. And actually, that's a really great driver when it comes to that, because you've got a sort of emotional, moral piece as well as a logical and a strategic piece. So back to the lady that spoke this morning about appealing on different levels, I'm able to do that and get hooks on all three levels. Our position on D&I is one in the broadest sense. So we've never gone down the route of saying we will take any sort of positive action around groups. We have focused in different areas, but that's been based, as you would expect in financial services, on very sound data. So we could demonstrate why we were doing that. But this is about an absolute broad approach, and we tackle this from the perspective of diversity of thinking, socio-economic background, social mobility, as well as all the sort of protected characteristic groups that we can think about. And it's absolutely about being a sustainable business. So how we employ sustainably and how we grow sustainably is part of that. Over the last 4 years, 2 areas of key focus for us have been around gender and youth. And that is because we could really show clearly that we had issues around that. And I'll come on to that just shortly. But what we've been pleasantly surprised by is the fact that we've been focusing on those and the knock-on effects that that's had on the wider culture and wider sort of diversity and inclusion efforts. And we've specifically approached those 2 things in a bigger context. What we're able to see now, sort of 4 years on, is just the impact that's having, not just within Standard Life, but in our external reputation, but also in communities, which is a really key strand for us. So in terms of turning to first example about breaking down barriers to employment, Standard Life have a real core value around doing the right thing, and we have a sort of core purpose around building a more prosperous world. In financial services, what that tends to equate to is going out and doing lots of financial literacy and financial awareness training, so that we're getting to all sorts of groups about how do you grow your wealth, how do you manage it, how do you save better, how do you save for the future. We wanted to take a different approach, and that was about how do we make employment accessible to everybody, regardless of their difference, their background, their socio-economic upbringing. And so we focus very much on employability and social mobility as one of our key strands. To enable this, we've really thought about what needs to happen inside our organisation. It's all very well saying we stand for that, but actually if the experience when you join us doesn't back that up, then it's not particularly sustainable. So we're very focused on the employment practices and the development opportunities that we have inside the business. Very focused on the partnerships that we've created externally and the community connections. So how do we break down the myth for some groups that investment management companies and financial services is maybe not a place that's attractive to go and work? How do we make that really accessible? And how do we do that through external partnerships to really open up access? And that's part of our approach, doing things directly, but also indirectly, so that we can achieve scale in what we do. Really thinking about how we are more representative of our customer base. The government legislation around pensions and auto-enrolment has brought a whole new client base for us, and actually one that we hadn't really focused on. So how do we really think about the millennials coming through that are paying 20 quid into their pension every month, and how do we really genuinely have great propositions for them over the long term? And you can't do that when you only have a sort of older workforce. And then the UK living wage is massively important to us. We're all about a real job with a fair wage, and we believe that the UK living wage and not the minimum wage is the place that we pitch that. So we pay that as a minimum to everybody that works with us, and that's the sort of minimum that comes in. So what that has led to over the last few years is a sort of, as it says at the top, a real comprehensive programme of sequential interventions. We started off with something called the Edinburgh Guarantee Scheme, which was about young people coming out of education and really struggling to find employment. But what we've done over time is really thought about how do we get before that and how do we bring that afterwards, and really thinking about the sequencing and really focusing on the transition points where people find access to employment really difficult. We do that in two ways. We run some things ourselves directly or participate directly, and for other things we set organisations, community-based organisations, charitable organisations up to do that. So we'd sit on their board, we'd provide funding, we'd help them develop the frameworks to do it, and then we'd support them to run things over time. So taking school children, for example, Skillsforce are an organisation that we support, and that's about giving financial support and board sort of advisory support for Skillsforce to go into primary schools before they even hit secondary schools. Career Ready is mentoring in secondary schools, and we do that directly. And Social Mobility Foundation is about when people are transitioning from high school into university, and that's much more about e-mentoring, particularly first generation going to university where dropouts can be higher. I talked about the Edinburgh Guarantee Scheme and young people. This was the founding piece for us, and it was really about a call to action for employers in Edinburgh, of which we are one of the largest, where the sources for young people to go into employment had really dried up. And when we then did our own data, it was a real call to action for us. We had nobody under the age of 21 in the whole organisation in 2010, and only 0.5% under the age of 25. So the stars sort of aligned, and we said we'll take a lead on this. And since then we've had 6 cohorts through the Edinburgh Guarantee Scheme. We keep about 70% in the organisation. It's a 6-month placement, employability placement. We keep about 70%, 20% go into other employment and higher education, and we support others to keep looking. We also run apprenticeships through Investment 2020 and modern apprenticeships, which we're using as an actual talent source into the organisation, mainly in sort of IT and ops areas, but through that we help young people to gain a formal qualification. And then bringing it forward into other challenges. So just some examples, the Prince's Trust, we don't do that directly, but that's a way to bring small and medium-sized enterprises together with youth employment, and we've developed the framework for the Prince's Trust now to run that. Tomorrow's People is about reaching those who've maybe had criminal convictions or drugs issues, for example. And veterans programmes about coming out of the armed forces into the workforce, massively challenging transition. And we've just announced a partnership with the Scottish Government over the next 3 years where we'll match funding a whole sort of programme and initiative around supporting veterans into the workplace. And then on disability, Reemploy we use as a talent source. We share all our entry-level vacancies with them, and that's really diversified our long and short list, which has been super. Leonard Cheshire is about Change 100 programme. The interns, and Capability Scotland was our charity partner last year, so we're supporting them through fundraising in the organisation to fund their efforts. And just some of the things that underpin it, we've heard about some of these things today. The introduction of gamification and values-based assessments, a critical thing, as well as sort of blind assessments. It's absolutely not saying you must have proved yourself in particular types of situations to be able to come and work here. And we've now got over a third of people who we probably would have completely disregarded who are now fully employed in Standard Life. And actually that just tells us that we're on the right track about getting to the right people who have the right values fit for the organisation, and anything else is trainable, that experience and developable. Just moving on to the second example is around gender balance in the workforce. And we had a real challenge around, we brought in over 50% graduates, over 50% are emerging leaders, and that dropped off massively, as you see in most financial services organisations. That didn't align with our client and customer base, and the fact that that female base is growing. We wanted to understand better what was going on and prevent that drop-off. And 59% of women in our engagement survey told us that they felt they could achieve their career. That wasn't enough for us. Why couldn't that be well into the 90s? So some real sort of key drivers about taking this forward. And these are some of the things that we focused on. How we help females progress through the organisation. One of the things that's had the biggest impact is through my previous role about really working the succession plans, the talent programme nominations, lots of conversations about why is that female not on there because they work 4 days or they work 3 days. Well, that's just about how we enable that as a business. So lots of really challenging conversations. And our board readiness curriculum, we've really established that as a core way for people to develop inside the organisation. Came from this agenda, but it's open to all our talent. And that's proved massive, that's had massive impact already in terms of the experiences that our female leaders and our female talent are bringing into the organisation, and they're actually securing, it's increasing their success of securing more senior roles, just with their breadth. So specific leadership development, not necessarily, we've never gone down the route of female-only programmes, but actually just what are the things that help based on what female leaders are telling us. And making sure they've got an internal development coach who is trained in some of the things that we know females find more difficult in our organisation. So having presence, political navigation, networking, how they do that in a comfortable way. So really making sure they're teed up to do that. A lot of networking, a lot of how do we bring people together based on the lift as you climb principle. Let's get our senior people pulling more through. And policy. A lot of organisations focus on policy and not how that lands. We've really focused on landing that well, increasing maternity, paternity pay, shared parental leave, which is now taken up more by men than women, and that's a sort of market leading proposition that we put in place. Working carers, 5-day carers leave, all of these things that just make life easier, and that's based on the feedback that we got. And underpinning all of that, our values and leadership. So our leadership model has inclusivity fed right through it. It's not a separate thing. Inclusive leadership's not over there, and our leadership model over here, it's absolutely part of that. Our people promise has 3 strands, one of which is talented people playing to strengths. We have an organisation founded on a strengths-based philosophy, which is it's not about what you're not good at, it's what you're great at and how do we leverage that. And that's where the cognitive, the experiential, the diversity of thought comes in. Unconscious bias, we've worked with decision makers, but also through our people function to ask the killer questions in the moment, just to have them on the tip of their tongue so that they can really challenge those things. And 96% of our people have all gone through unconscious bias training. Manager awareness and capability through our personal best programme about what is inclusive leadership. This isn't about bias, trying to change the dialogue, it's about getting to know your people as individuals and really growing them as individuals. We have 6 employee networks, all of which are award winning. We started off with a Women's Development Network, not really knowing what would happen, and we're bowled over by the appetite in the organisation, and that's just spun off into different areas. And we keep track of engagement, not just do our people think we're doing the right thing on D&I, where we're above the norm, but we track indicators of inclusion around do I feel respected, do I feel valued. So just to sum up, a couple of things. Overall, we've increased our engagement and satisfaction scores. In youth employment, our age profile has gone from 0.5 to 8% in 6 years, which we're really proud of because we've had to really focus on doing that. And that's really changing how the organisation feels. And it's brilliant to have these young people in your teams. And from gender, in 2 years we've managed to increase the talent pipeline by 10%. And that's the pipeline that will feed the targets that we've just needed to set through the Women in Finance Charter and go public with about our senior level representation at the moment. This is a population that will mean that we can shift that over the short to medium term. So some key things in there that we can demonstrate absolute impact, and it's a case of continuing that effort and broadening it out now as well. So just to share a couple of examples.